Dzień dobry Państwu, nazywam się Krzysztof Strzemecki, a ksiądz Szuniewicz był moim wujem mojego ojca, a bratem mojej babci. Greetings from Poland. To those of you who do not speak English, I have just introduced myself as Father Szuniewicz sister Wacława's grandson. My father was 13 when his uncle left for his first mission. I'm deeply grateful that Dr. Herculano Batista Neto contacted me after a message I wrote to a school in Irati and his efforts to keep Father Venceslau's memory alive. He also suggested that I should record this little speech for today. By the way, there's an interesting parallel between us. We are roughly of the same age. Father Szuniewicz was an important figure in the lives of our families. Yet we both were too little when he died to have any first-hand memories of him. Still, we both have felt the same need to celebrate his life and commemorate him. What I remember from childhood was the curiosity I felt touching the few objects associated with my great-uncle. Among them, there were Brazilian butterfly wings that he put into envelopes and sent to Poland in order to illustrate the incredible beauty of Brazil. What I also remember was the atmosphere of love and respect that all the members of my family had for him. However, for most of my life, I just took him for granted, which sometimes happens. Yes, I had a missionary in my family. Yes, he was a doctor who lived in China and Brazil. I must admit, it was complete strangers who made me rediscover his life and learn more fascinating facts. An amateur family biographer made me aware that in Brazil there are a school and a street named after him. From a newspaper interview with a Polish professor of ophthalmology, I learned about his struggle to make the Polish doctors' community aware of Father Venceslau's pioneering work in the field. From Herculano, I learned that there is still some interest in his life and that another book was coming about him, today's book. Then there came a personal meeting with a delegation from Hebei Provincial Eye Hospital, one of the most famous hospitals in China, probably the biggest eye hospital in the world, with more than 500,000 outpatients and 20,000 inpatients each year. The Chinese professionals still remember what they owe to him, and they have erected a monument in his honor and have a museum which commemorates also his work there. By the way, when I was talking to the delegation, I asked them whether Father Venceslau, after all a Catholic missionary, was forced to leave the communist China. They said not at all. One of his patients, whom he said his vision, was a high-ranking general who had driven for 2 days to seek his help. After this, Father Venceslau was welcomed to stay, but his superiors took a different decision. So now, in my adult years, my curiosity has changed into deep respect for Father Venceslau. After all, he got his education in very turbulent times of the First World War and Bolshevik Revolution. He traveled from continent to continent in times when travel was slow, difficult, and dangerous. After he left for China, he soon got surrounded by the Chinese Civil War, with his hospital shelled by bullets and cannonballs and plundered by hostile soldiers. Yet in the difficult circumstances, he did his job with relentless energy, training the medical professionals and operating on people's eyes. Some of the types of operations are described as difficult and pioneering. Mind you, he worked on second-hand medical instruments withdrawn from Polish hospitals and sent to his missions to get a second life. Some accounts say that he operated at daytime, and at nights he often spent sharpening his scalpels by hand for the following day's use. He also found time and energy to keep well informed of the developments in his medical specializations. He was a man of action. Before his missions, he organized in his city of Vilna a network of baby feeding stations. He made collections of medical instruments for his hospitals. In China, he set up and supervised hospitals and clinics in his province, covering dozens of kilometers by bicycle. I understand that in Brazil, he was also active doing work for the sake of the local communities. He was a very intelligent person. He had a double specialization, a pediatrician and an eye doctor. He did scientific work during his stay in the United States. He spoke 7 languages, played the piano, and wrote poetry. My family has remembered him as a warm, caring personality, taking deep interest in his family affairs from afar. Even by modern standards, with greater possibilities and higher expectations, he has remained a role model for those who have heard of him as a doctor, researcher, priest, a missionary, a social activist, and simply a very good person. Bardzo dziękuję za uwagę, pozdrawiam i polecam książkę.